Imagine trading boardrooms for dirt roads, corporate strategies for motorbike adventures, and profit margins for stories of unsung African heroes. Today, we welcome Carolin Zeitler, a culture alchemist, a lead with love coach, and chief adventurer who is redefining what it means to lead, impact, and live boldly. From Qatar to Zanzibar, she spent 15 years guiding purpose-driven leaders to build businesses that thrive on connection, courage, and community, not just cash. And whether she's building businesses in unexpected places, riding across Africa on a motorbike, or challenging readers to reimagine how they work, she's constantly pushing boundaries. And that, of course, is why she's here. Her vision to inspire millions to run businesses in more inclusive, future conscious, and impact driven ways. Carolin, welcome to the Boundary Breakers Collectives. I am so thrilled to have you here and really looking forward to have a conversation with you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Where are you based right now? Where are you calling in from?
Zanzibar, the beautiful tropical island of Zanzibar.
Beautiful. So I always start with the same question, Carolin, and that is, why do you consider yourself a boundary breaker?
Good question. I think because I've always done things in unconventional ways, and people always react to me with, but that's crazy. Like, how can you do that? Or why would you do that? No matter whether they're talking about where I choose to live or how I choose to do business, or so many things that I've done in my life have been very unconventional. But for me, it's really about trusting my truth and going with that, even if it's not what is expected or what is the norm, but really going with what feels true for me.
You say you've always been unconventional. Does that mean that you were like that when you were a child? Is that something that goes back to very early
Yes.
years? You start laughing.
Yes, that goes back to very early years. So even when I was a child, I remember, for example, in school that my math teachers would always be completely puzzled by the way that I would solve a problem. They'd be like, yeah, you come to the right solution, but why would you do it that way? That doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, it makes more sense to me. So
Mm.
that's why I do it that way.
Yeah. I believe that we are all born adventurous and courageous and with like infinite possibilities. And then from day one, when we start to receive our education at home and at school, everything is starting to limit and reduce opportunities and possibilities. So a lot, of course, has to do with our upbringing, with how our parents are educating us, the beliefs we get in our daily experiences. And for some, these are very impactful, and yet for others, it's no. I have my own structures, I have my own way of looking at the world, and whatever happens, I still am going to be a little bit disruptive, breaking those boundaries, looking for alternatives. So, did you have very supportive parents and very supportive upbringing, or was it more, no, this is just who I am and what I did?
I would say a little bit of both. My mom is quite the rebel. My father is quite conservative, so he was always stumped by anything I did. He would just shake his head at me and just not understand what prompted me to behave like that. But my mother was always a bit of a rebel, and so she was always very supportive, and she always, to this day, she always says, if it makes you happy, then go for it.
Yeah. Being unconventional doesn't always mean that you are happy. It's also
No.
challenging sometimes and difficult and harsh and sometimes lonely also. So, what's your experience there, Carolyn?
Yeah, my experience is that I've always had to find my tribe. Like that for me is the way forward in life. It's like finding my tribe wherever I go. And I found that wherever I go, I find my tribe. But there also understanding that there's so many parts of me, right? I am made up, like all of us, not just me, but all of us are made up of so many parts. And sometimes you find the tribe that really resonates with one part of you, and sometimes you find the tribe that resonates with another part of you, right? But that's for me what makes it so interesting to go to different places and meet different people, because these different parts of me light up in different contexts.
I absolutely like that. I think it is so important that we find our tribe and that we build our communities and our networks of support and encouragement. And like you say, there's so many different parts of us that are basically forming who we are as a holistic human being. And it is
Yeah.
about integrating these parts and also sometimes I would say embracing the paradoxes in the roles. And so I can imagine that you have very different tribes and it's an invitation for everybody to build those different tribes instead of being very unique in terms of I'm a professional, I will only build these professional communities and professional networks because there's so many other elements that we can include. We don't have to bring them together or mix them per definition, but it can, of course, bring us very different angles to look at the same question or the same problem or the same challenge or celebrate in different ways or successes.
Absolutely. I think this is a big problem of our time is that we are locked in echo chambers a lot of the time because of the way that algorithms are programmed, because of the way that people are more and more polarizing opinions. And for me, that doesn't make any sense because if I just speak into a room where I get only agreement, then how can I ever learn? How can I ever grow from that? I need to speak into spaces where I get disagreement, where I get pushback. No, like not in a hateful way, obviously, but in a way that makes sense because I know a lot of people that I respect that disagree with me on some very fundamental things. But I still respect them because when they explain it to me, I'm like, okay, that makes sense from where you're standing, from your background and your upbringing, your context. It makes complete sense. And so I can respect that. I don't have to agree with it, but I can respect it.
It's like you have your own definition of community and of interaction and of belonging in terms that, especially we as women, it is so important for us to feel belonging to a group, to a community. And for many of us, belonging equals harmony and equals agreeing and equals not being in conflict or discussions or in polarized situations. And so we sometimes avoid to speak our truth, sometimes avoid to bring something to the table because we don't know what to expect. And we do not want to deal with, like you say, different opinions because it is like considered as a conflict, as a problem, as an issue, because we want this harmony, we want this belonging, we want this inclusion. And I really like what you say there in terms of finding the courage and the boldness, but also the respect to accept that there are other positions and there are other meaning. There's other meaning to different terms of to different events or situations, that other people give different meanings to these things, and that it doesn't mean that you cannot be in a community or that you cannot collaborate or even co-create. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I think I always say that like the truth is like, or the reality is like a big cake or a big pizza. And my view on it is just one slice. So I want to see some of the other slices as well so that I can get a fuller picture. And I think that's something that when you're traveling is really a gift, that if you allow yourself, it's not everyone does, but if you allow yourself to really listen and to just take it, hear what people have to say and learn a little bit about how they live without having this attitude of, oh, I know better, I'm going to show you how it's done, but just taking a step back and just observing, you can learn so much and you can see so many different perspectives. And often I think, oh, wow, I've never considered that. I've never thought that this is a way to live. But obviously it's working for millions of people. So obviously it is a
there
way
must be
to live.
something right about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's basically what we are doing. We are in a history and in a culture of good and bad and right and wrong and left and right. Everything is very binary and it's very easy then to polarize and to go into confrontation instead of looking at the same event or the same challenge or same problem or whatever it is next to each other instead of being oppositional and trying to convince somebody that they're wrong, or that it's not right at least, or that they should change their mind in a very judgmental perspective. It's also interesting to be at, like, I would say, at least metaphorically, a round table where the project or the goal is in the middle of the table, and you look at this as partners, as conversation partners, as goal partners, instead of thinking, okay, one here will be right and the other one will be wrong. So one will be winning and the other one will be losing, and nobody wants to lose. And it's also not a very fair and just system to have this. Unfortunately, it's the world that we live in, right? Either you're left or right, you're right or wrong. It's in politics, it's everywhere. And it's such a difficult way to thrive. Yeah, it's a survival thing. It's not a thrive thing.
Exactly. And then there's a more subtle form of it where I think that obvious form of it, I think more people are aware of that. But if you look at the more subtle form of it, it's where people come, especially people, when you speak about people from the global north coming to the global south, you often see this, like feeling of superiority and, oh, I am here to help them. And assuming that we are in a better position to help. And that is also a form of creating that kind of imbalance, even though it's done with a good intention. I understand that people do it with a good intention. You're creating an inequality there, and you're not listening, you're not taking people seriously. And I see it here all the time. People who've been here 2-3 weeks, and then they just tell me what people here should be doing differently. I'm like, you've been here for 2 weeks. You have no idea what people's challenges are, how they're living, why they're doing what they're doing. Just take time first and listen. Just listen. Because if we come from this assumption that everyone has something to share and we can learn from anyone and everyone, there's a whole different approach to others. And it's something where I think coming from the global north, we actively need to fight that, because it's a kind of unconscious prejudice. It's a kind of subconscious prejudice that we have, that we think we know everything better. And I even now still catch myself sometimes having these thoughts. Oh, they should just do this. And then I'm like, Carolin, stop. Just take a couple of steps back and just observe, listen, and don't immediately jump to, like, our way of doing things is better. Our way, look at where the global north is at, especially right now.
Yeah, we're doing great.
You can't really say that we're doing everything better. It's not, there's no obvious evidence of that.
Exactly. Absolutely. And I think that is also why I see that a lot also with leaders, even with female leaders. That is, we are so used that, or we feel that people expect from us that we make decisions, that we know it, that we have all the knowledge ready, that we are leading as such. And it has dropped down at all levels in terms of creating this judgmental style of interacting, giving opinions unsolicited, judge something is good or bad. And it has, of course, also be reinforced by social media, where you like or you don't like, and you're constantly choosing something is good or not good. And we may not be aware of that, but this is basically what we are doing, and how we are also bringing up the next generations. All the generations are still aware of that change that is, I would say, dramatic. If you're born in it, it's even more difficult. But we have an idea and an opinion and a judgment about everything. And sometimes, not sometimes, in many situations, it's such a good idea to just close your mouth and listen. And people are not always asking for an opinion. They're asking for support. They're asking for understanding, for empathy, for sponsorship. And this is not only something that you experience in the world that you live in, Carolin. I mean, it is in general, it is an absolute need, even in personal life and in corporate life and in non-for-profit life, in politics. It is about finding this understanding as human beings. But we want to jump into action, right? We want to have solutions. We want to do everything as quickly as possible, because we don't know how to be still and reflect and really connect with the other and see how we can co-create something, sometimes even from scratch, but that is benefiting everybody's needs and requests. And that's a big jump for many people, right?
Yeah, and it takes a lot of effort. That's the thing I think that people shy away from. It takes time and it takes effort because you really have to move out of your own comfort zone. You have to push yourself and
Yeah.
go, I've never considered that, but what if it were true? What would that change? And also to understand all this sort of unconscious bias that we have, this automatic assumption that if someone doesn't have much, automatically they're worth less. Or they know less or something. There's some kind of, nobody would say that consciously, of course. Nobody would say that out loud, but there is something in the back of our minds that is programmed that way and that equates intelligence with money and things like that. Whereas if you look around you, there is, again, no evidence of that. There is no correlation between intelligence and money. There are extremely intelligent people that don't make a lot of money, and there are extremely unintelligent people that make a lot of money. There is no direct connection between the two, but in our minds it is connected. And so we have a lot of unconscious bias about so many things and that's again where I really value meeting new people and putting myself in new contexts, because it uncovers so much of that. If you're putting yourself in these strange contexts, it uncovers, like they say that the fish can't describe water because it's always in the water, right? If you come out of the water, you suddenly realize what water is.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have been doing business in so many unexpected places. I was mentioning it at the introduction, from Qatar to Zanzibar. So if you could use this experience as teaching you about resilience and cultural and adaptability and breaking these conventional rules and also business rules, what is it that you feel are like universal truths and wisdoms that we all can learn from?
I know it sounds a bit like a cliche, but honestly, I think the most important thing is to learn to go with the flow. Find the flow of that place, because every place has its own flow. And if you manage to find the flow and go into that flow, go with that flow, then you can have a very easy life. But if you try to apply the rules from your home country to another country, you will be very frustrated a lot of the time because that country just operates differently. A simple example is traffic, right? If you drive in another country like you drive at home, you will be cursing a lot and you will be thinking like, why can't these people drive? Why don't they do it right? But if you just observe, okay, how do people drive here? How does it work here? And you go with it, you can have a very easy life.
Yeah. I love that, Carolyn, because I also believe we do not have to go to very different countries in order to apply this. You can also apply this in every part of your life, because we do the same if we visit friends or families in a different house. We do the same if we join a new company. We always try to see the things from the perspectives from our past, from our experiences and our settings and our contexts from the past, without being open for new things. And I see a lot of leaders also like moving jobs or taking on a promotion, and the first thing they want to do is change things instead of looking and watching, okay, this is a new environment, this might be a new competition setting, this might be, or this is a completely new culture. And yet it's again this idea that we need to be in control, this idea that we need to do something or to change something or to act or to prove our value or to prove our worth, that makes it that we try to help or to change or to move things as quickly as possible sometimes, without this awareness for what is there already. And of course there might be things that are not optimized, but those are the first things that we focus on, instead of looking, okay, what is working good here? What is great here? What is something that we absolutely need to amplify or expand? We try to focus on the bad things because that's a way of us feeling more in control.
And
Do you
it's also
recognize that?
something that is more valued, right? Like bad
Yeah.
news sells, and provocation, like provocative art sells, like things like that, they get responses. Whereas things that look for harmony don't get the same amount of response. So we are trained to look for the provocation. We are trained to look for the bad news because that's what gets reactions, right? So it's really a shame, because that question, what's working well already, can give us such amazing insights sometimes and just let us see. And also, I was thinking of the example, like I love living in shared houses. So it's a really nice experience for me to live with other people. And there also you have that. You come into a context with other people. And of course, everyone has different ideas of how the kitchen should be set up, what clean looks like, things like that. People have different ideas about that, right? And it's about understanding, like, where are the strengths of each person? One person might be the person who takes the rubbish out every time, but they never put away the dishes from the drying rack. And it's okay, they take the rubbish out every time. So then I can sometimes put their dishes away because I never have to go take the rubbish out. We have, again, it's a way of looking at things and being a bit more in that mindset of trust rather than in the mindset of fear and control and like someone's trying to take advantage of me, like always coming from this assumption that people have a bad intention. Come from the assumption that people have a good intention and see what you can see then.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's beautiful. It makes me think to something that you mentioned also in the preparation, and that is something that I also took from reading the Conversations with God, and that is that everything that we do is either love-driven or fear-driven, and there might be some derivatives, but it is about how you look at the world, how you look at other people, and basically also how you look at yourself. So do you have this trustful relationship with universe, or are you in fear and activating also constantly your fight or flight modus or your paralyzed modus? And so if you can see that intentions of people are good, that what is happening, always ask for some investigation instead of for judgment and immediately jumping into conclusions, and that it is a long-term co-creation and community building that is bringing us joy and that is making us thrive, rather than the hyper-individualized modus that we are living in many situations. Even personal, there's a lot of people living alone. And if we live in, I'm not going to say that everybody's living in gated communities, but everything is closed, right? We close our doors, we close our gates. This is our private territory. Also in organizations, when you look at senior leadership teams, a lot of organizations work in silos where there's no cooperation, not even at leadership level. And so this hyper individualized way of living doesn't bring us a lot, because we are constantly in protect mode, right? This is ours, this is what we do, this is our responsibility. So nobody comes in there, and we will not go any further than that. So there's no joint agency for a group goal or for a joint vision or a common vision. And that is something that is so difficult to build, because it's like in cultures and the stories that you tell me, I believe in some cultures, and especially like in Africa, this is much more alive. This community where there is this openness, where there is no protection and rule setting in any minor aspect of our lives. And I believe that it makes a better place to live, a better place to thrive.
Yeah, what I really notice here is that people are just much more alive. Like you really, when you walk along the street, people greet you. Like anyone, any stranger will greet you on the street and say hello. You can walk up to anyone and start a conversation with them. They'll never have a problem with that. And there's so many aspects where I'm like, this place is alive. You can see it in people's eyes. You can feel it on the streets. The streets are pulsing with life, right?
Yeah.
And when I go back to Germany, for example, it feels so dead in comparison. Even when there's people, even when there's people on the street, their eyes are not shining and they don't make eye contact. They're just like in their own little bubble. And if you try to make contact with a stranger, most of them will look at you like,
what do you want from me?
What do you want from me? Why are you talking to me? As if you're like strange because you're talking to someone that you don't yet know. So it's really a whole different mindset. And here also, anyone, like whenever I get stuck with the motorbike, when something happens, when I can't start it, for example, within a few minutes, like 5 people are there. And they're like, even if we can't communicate very well, it doesn't matter, because they will just start fixing things and start trying things. And one of them will drive off and buy a spare part and come back and put it in. And it just happens. And nobody expects anything either. They help you, and then they say goodbye, and that's it.
And that's it, yeah. I guess, Carolyn, we cannot all go to Africa in order to have that experience, but what would be your advice for women, for leaders in general, to create a little bit more of that atmosphere or setting wherever they are? Because basically it's also mindset. Yeah. It's not really as such related to where you are. It's related to who you are and how you show up. So what would be your advice there?
Exactly. So I think the first thing is that the leading question for me is always, how can I best serve the greater good? And the greater good includes me, of course, right? It also has to serve me, but it also has to serve other people, the environment, other beings on the planet, right? So that, I think, if you go into situations with that mindset, you come from a whole different perspective already, and it makes you set up things differently. And also to just build trust, because environments where trust is happening, they're not just more comfortable, they're also much more efficient. Because think about it, if you have a person that you trust implicitly, you don't have to have a lot of conversation, you don't have to have control mechanisms, you can just hand something to them and know that they will do it, right? If you don't trust them, you have to make sure, and you have to have some kind of control mechanism and checking up on them and this and that. And it creates not just anxiety, but also a lot of effort and time goes into checking up and making sure. So of course you can't just trust like overnight, I understand that, but consciously make an effort to build trust. Trust someone with a small thing. If they would deliver, then trust them with a bigger thing. Then if they deliver again, you trust them with an even bigger thing, and so on. And that way you can just build up the trust with people.
Yeah. I love that. And it reminds me of, there's a video, I think it's still on YouTube, and it was created a couple of years after, some people might still remember that, after the Enron scandal in the United States in the 90s. And so what happened was there were some devastating situations that basically ruined economics. And so there was an enormous distrust. And so they started to implement rules and procedures and processes and things like that. And it was Stephen Covey that created this research, The Cost of Low Trust. It's crazy. It is amazing how much it costs us not to trust. And they created another book, and I think it's also Stephen Covey Jr., The Smart Trust. It's like you say, start small. Don't trust your plumber with open heart surgery, and probably don't trust your doctor with plumbing. It's about smart trust. It is about evaluating, but from a positive and appreciative place. But building trust is absolutely essential. And it's also something that I have learned. I've worked with Judith Glaser for 18 months studying and getting certified in conversational intelligence. And number one was priming for trust, where language, even if we don't speak the same language, and even if we are not really strong, if it's not our mother tongue, and there might be a lot of misunderstandings that are potential misunderstandings, it is so important to build that trust, to prime for trust, to be very transparent about intentions. And so we can use it not only in day-to-day situations, but also in corporate life. There's a business case for trust. I'm very happy that you bring that up.
Yeah, and trust comes with transparency, right? If we want people to trust us, we have to be transparent. And that's one of these words that is so wildly misunderstood, because transparency doesn't mean that I have to tell everyone everything about my life. I don't have to share my sex life with them or anything like that. It's just, I am open about my intentions. I am clear about the things that they are concerned with, that they are involved with. And yeah, I get a lot of pushback when I talk about transparency from people who say, yeah, but it's none of their business what I do in my private life or whatever. I'm like, it's got nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
It's not, unless you have a major crisis in your private life that is affecting your work performance, then maybe you need to mention that. But even then, you just need to mention it. You don't have to go into details. Nobody's saying you have to lay everything open.
Exactly. That's not transparency. Yeah.
No.
Absolutely. Yeah. Beautiful. Carolin, what are your next plans in order to fulfill your mission?
There's so many plans that I have. We've been working on this Women Who Impact documentary film series, which is my passion project. And we've so far filmed 3 episodes and are just editing the last 2 and then we're going to push that out and see what kind of reception it gets in order to then make the remaining. We have 5 or 6 more episodes that we can make. But I want to push it out first in that kind of MVP style. Put it out there, get some feedback and iterate and see if we can make the series even better by getting some interaction with our potential audience. Also, I have a program that I've been working on for many years. It's called Culture Alchemy. And I've been building this program for many years and doing it in person. But now I've actually put it online because I really think that it can benefit people who maybe can't afford to hire me in person for the whole process, because it's a 1-year-long process. So you can imagine it adds up a bit, but who want to go through it because culture is so important in the workplace. And what happens a lot when culture consultants come in is they maybe define the values, the vision, and the mission. They put it on a super nice poster and it's hung up somewhere in the corridor. And then that's it. And people forget about it after a few weeks. So what we do with Culture Alchemy, it's like we co-create, first of all, with everyone in the company, the culture manifesto. Then we activate with everyone in the company. So we have like fun activities around each guiding principle to really bring them to life, to help people memorize them. And we integrate into all the HR processes and documentation so that it becomes a really natural part of everyday life at the organization. And it just becomes second nature to people.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So there's more from you to see soon. And that's my next question, or my last question. Where can people follow your adventures? What's the easiest way to connect with you and to see what you're doing?
So I think the best website is at the Impact Collective. So we have the Impact Collective, and actually, let me get this right because it's changing. It's theimpactcollective.love is where they will find us.
You now have the extension .love. Are you kidding me?
No, I
that's
bought it.
Amazing. I love it.
I bought it recently. I saw that it was available and I was like, this is exactly what I want, because my coaching is Lead with Love coaching. So I thought the impactcollective.love is perfect.
Beautiful.
So that's where they can find everything, even the information about Women Who Impact. It's all on that website.
All right. I make sure that all this information is in the show notes and in the comments. And so for everybody that was impacted by Carolin's story and wants to find out more, or wants to contribute, or wants to just shift in terms of how they look at things, connect with Carolin, watch her website, and we will probably hear more from all the adventures and interactions that she sets up. Because how many people do you want to impact?
I want to impact millions of people.
Millions of people. There we go. I wish with you that you can do that, and that we can collaborate and co-create on that. And everybody that feels they can contribute in some way, just connect, and then we can take it from there. Carolin, you also have a freebie for our listeners, something that people can download, or?
Yeah, that's right. It's the Clarity and Action Roadmap Kit, because people are often lacking clarity about how they want to go forward, and that keeps them from taking action in the direction of fulfilling their dreams. I created this kit so that they can understand a bit more about what their strengths are, what their fears and obstacles are, and then plan the way forward.
That's wonderful. And they can download that via URL probably?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
The link will be in the show notes, right?
Then we will, gosh. Then we will make sure that it's in the show notes. Thank you so much, Carolyn, for your generosity. So everybody that wants to find out more, that wants to get more clarity, just go to the show notes, connect with Carolyn. All the information is there. Download your freebie and learn and see how you can contribute to a better world together with us. And that is making us very happy. Thank you so much, Carolyn. See you next time. And for
Thank
everybody else,
you.
hope to see you next week. Check some of our other episodes and see who is inspiring and encouraging you to just break your own boundaries. Take care. Bye.